This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
At Pepe Sayer, we focus on quality. So if someone comes into your restaurant and they see you're using Pepe Sayer, they know immediately that that is a quality product you've got in front of you on the table. And that comes from a decade of just doing quality butter day after day.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Thirroul people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
And you can just have a conversation, you can tell them a story about a wine, and before you know it, you're having conversation, you're becoming friends almost. And that's what important customer service is acknowledging and treating someone with respect, like you would an old friend.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Rory O'Carroll runs Thirroul Cellars, an independent liquor store located in the idyllic suburb on the south coast of New South Wales. Thirroul Cellars is more than just a bottle-o. It's a community hub that brings together those that seek the gourmet, a bit of luxury, and the artisanal beverage. In truth, we need a heck more of these kinds of places in our neighbourhoods. Hi Rory, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, thank you.
It's so nice to have you on the podcast to talk about the wonders that is Thirroul Cellars. But I want to first find out a little bit about you. Take me back to your very first memory of wine.
Well, I grew up in Ireland, and my first memory of wine was sitting around the table with family when we do a special dinner with the good linen and the good plates. And we'd get a wine poured for us as kids. It was quite normal in Europe when you're 14 that you would have maybe half a glass of wine with your dinner. Not every night, but on a special occasion. So that was my first introduction to wine, and I don't even know what it was. From memory, it was kind of light and slightly sweet. So in Ireland those times you could probably only get really French or Spanish wines are probably the most popular. So I'm imagining it may have been, I don't know, it could have even been a Lambrusco for all I know.
Yeah, right. Do you remember liking it or going, ugh, what's this crap?
No, I remember liking it because I remember it was just slightly sweet. So, yeah, I remember liking it.
Yeah, the mind boggles now, doesn't it? Now you really want to know what it was.
It does. And I would really like to know what it was. I'm sure my mum would not remember.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Tell me a little bit about how you came to find yourself in Australia.
Well, I followed my girlfriend out because we spent 3 years living in Ireland, in Dublin. And I wasn't in the hospitality scene at that stage. I was in the theatre scene, funnily enough. And so we'd met in Australia. We'd met in England. And she came to Ireland for 3 years. And then she went back to Australia and I followed her back about 6 months after. So back in 1998. So I've worked it out. I've been here longer than I was in Ireland. Pretty much an Australian now.
No way. You don't sound Australian at all.
I can put it on.
I don't doubt it. So where did you move when you first came over to Australia, and what were your first impressions?
Yeah, so I had spent 6 months prior to that back in 94 out here. And then when I actually did come out to emigrate, we lived in Darlinghurst, funnily enough. I was still in a theatre game working at Sydney Opera House. And at night time, we just work in a couple of bars. We used to work at Thirroul Cellars, which is now, I believe, Camperdown took it over, Camperdown Cellars. Back then, it used to be called Thirroul Cellars. So we used to work there. I used to work there at night, and so did Jackie, my wife. And that's kind of where the bottle shop thing started for us, really, was working at Thirroul Cellars. And we've even got some old props from that place that we got when they closed down that are now sitting pride in place in Thirroul Cellars. So that was our first introduction to actual liquor store. Prior to that, obviously, I'd worked in pubs. And, for a short period of my life when I was a kid, my parents owned a pub. So I suppose it's always been around booze, really. but yeah, so that was the start of the bottle shop thing and introduction into wine. And then we kind of moved. We stayed in Darlinghurst for maybe 3 years, I think, and then, funnily enough, we ended up in Ostamere through just a series of events that my wife's one of her best friends lived in Wombara, and she ended up driving her home one day because they were just gas bagging so much in the car that she ended up driving her all the way home from Darlinghurst, and she was a mortgage broker. And so she knew all the places that were for sale in and around the area. And we literally found our house on the first day we were down here and put an offer in. And there we were. We were living in Ostamere. We were locals.
Oh, my gosh. You must thank that friend now. Holy cow.
Oh, it was all like, honestly, it was just fully, the stars aligned pretty much. We couldn't have planned it better.
Now, going back to when you were in Darlinghurst, when you were working at the Cellars, were you both totally stoked working in the Cellars, or was it just something that paid the bills? Did you both kind of, love wine?
Well, yeah, liked wine, but didn't know a lot about it at that stage. My wife probably knew way more than me. She was much more a hospital than I was. But it was. It was a bit of a community, the Cellars up there, like what we've got at our one now as well. But it was, we loved working it. It was around the corner. You got to meet all the locals. The staff were great. We talked about wine. We discussed different wines and, the business, I suppose. It gave us an angle into how a retail business was run as well, which, you get a bit of an upper hand with that as well. We really enjoyed it. It was a real community. We weren't like, I was probably only doing 2 or 3 shifts a week anyway because I had my other job. But it was a kind of another way of meeting people and enjoying wine and talking about it. To where the lingo started, I guess. Because you all know the wine lingo.
Well, we know some of it. I try not to use it too often. Now, tell me, you moved to a sleepy town from like the hubbub of Darlinghurst.
And it was very sleepy back then.
It was. I remember the first time you told me about, you were like, oh, can we do this? Like it's like stepping back an age. When did the idea of Thirroul Cellars come up and you guys purchasing that?
Well, that was another just stars aligned as well. We wanted to buy a business anyway, and I don't know if you would remember Fireworks on Moore Street. Well, before Scotty, who had it, there was a couple of ladies in there, and we knew they wanted to get out. We thought, should we put an offer in because we wanted our own business? And then my wife started to work at Thirroul Cellars because her friend who was working there was leaving, and she said, I'll put a good word in for you if you want to see if you want to get a job to save you having to commute to Sydney. So she did, and within 6 months, the people who had it, they had more liquor stores in Sydney, and they weren't down there very often, so they needed someone to look after it. So they asked Jackie to manage it. So she was managing it. I was still commuting to Sydney, and then I started working in there a little bit as well. And before we knew it, within 6 months, 8 months of starting to work there, they said that they were going to sell, that the owners that had it were going to sell. So we just thought we have to put everything we have into trying getting this liquor store. So we did. That's what we did. We just threw everything into a hat. Jackie's mum put her mortgage on our house, and we ended up getting it. And it was very stressful, but I guess it was kind of good. We were kind of blind going into it, which meant that there was no fear of taking a big mortgage. And we were young, we were 30, so we had all the time in the world, really, as far as we looked at it. And there you go. The rest is history.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, it gives me anxiety just thinking about it. And like you said, it's not just all of your money. It's usually somebody's guarantor or somebody's, really putting it on the line for you. And if it goes tits up, you're in big trouble. But thankfully.
Well, we kind of knew that it was a very strong business. You know, like we didn't have to set it up or establish it. It was already set up and established. So we were just caretakers, and we just had to make sure that we could make it better than what it was. And that's what we feel we've done. Now, I was just thinking about it earlier on that we're 20 years in October. From when we took over the business.
Wow, 20 years, that's something to celebrate. You definitely need to have a party of something or something to hallmark that occasion. When you think about, taking over, did you think, I want to change up what this is? I have these dreams for what this could be? Or were you just trying to keep it afloat and just, in those early days think, I want to keep the locals? And what was your thoughts going in?
Yeah, so basically, yes, obviously the landscape has changed in 20 years, but back then there was a lot of cheaper booze in there, which when we took over, what I mean by like cheap spirits, cheap wines, just not very interesting. So we definitely. The idea was when we took over was that we would try and clear that out and make it a bit more of a premium store. We kind of took the image from Thirroul Cellars and we wanted to recreate it in Thirroul. That's pretty much what we were thinking. So we did. But like when we took over, because what you do is you run your stock down when you're selling. So when they were selling to us, they'd run the stock right down. Well, like put it into perspective, like we could sit anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000 in stock, and when we bought it, we had 80,000, and it was in October, so we had a big slog of a couple of months to really fill that shop for Christmas, which was huge. Those first few months were huge. But yeah, we definitely wanted to create a more premium store whilst also being was also keeping the locals happy who wanted something a little bit cheaper and who wanted their cream sherry or whatever. So we didn't want to alienate and make the locals feel like that they couldn't come to us and get something that wasn't too expensive. So we've always kind of been able to stock both ends of the spectrum pretty much.
If you think about two products, just to kind of polarize things, something that was like flying off the shelves back in those early days till something that does really well for you now. Can you think of two products that are, totally different?
That still sell really well. Look, the landscape has changed quite a lot, as you know, and the drinks industry has really changed quite a bit. But I suppose really we still sell cask wine. It's still popular. Some of the old ones still sell, like your old cream sherry, your Royal Reserve Port, stuff like that. So there were some of the cheaper products that sold back in the day that still sell now. But yeah, other than that, there's been a lot of change, and in a short space of time too. In the last 5 years, we've really seen a huge change, and obviously people are leaning more towards natural wines. Craft beer is massive, so a lot of the old domestic beers, like, they still sell, but nowhere near as what they used to sell in the old days. So it really has changed.
Yeah, I mean, now it's one of the most coveted suburbs in the South Coast where you live, and it's so expensive to buy there, as I would know and tried to do, and it didn't work out so well for me. But was there any mistakes along the way that you perhaps, wanted to implement or do in your store where it didn't work out just simply because the clientele wasn't there? Or is there anything that you can kind of, like a story that where you really had to learn the lesson of adapting to the people that you were selling to?
We've always tried to stay not ahead of the curve, but with what's new is coming out. We probably were a little slow at the beginning to get a lot of the naturals in. But then we bit the bullet really quickly and kind of have the dedicated sections now in the store to natural wines, and yeah, people generally flock in to see what new stuff is. You got to have new things every week. But yeah, probably one thing it wasn't terribly unsuccessful, but it was probably one of those things that probably, it's you have to try everything, right? So, and this is my philosophy from day dot. If you don't have it, you can't sell it. So I'm not afraid to get random stuff in and give it a go, because you just never know who's going to walk through the door and be interested. So, so bearing that in mind, like probably, I can't really think of anything that we really made mistakes on, but there's probably things that that hung around for a bit too long, that you eventually move, you eventually move up, it moves out eventually, but the Coravin was one thing that we did get in. We tried Coravin for a little bit, and we'd end up selling 3 or 4 models, but obviously it wasn't the big thing that we thought we were going to, like we were going to be the people on the South Coast that sold Coravins. And we may do it again, I don't know, but it was we probably dedicated a bit too much space in the store for that. So that was probably kind of a sort of a mistake, I suppose.
I like the idea, though, that you've always not been afraid to kind of say, look, this might be, because like you said, Thirroul Cellars is really known for being on the forefront, for having, what a lot of the other stores don't have in the area. And I think that it's been really smart, like you said, to challenge your audience, as well as also have those staples that people need. And I think that that's what makes a great liquor store. And I think that you guys do that really well. It must be incredibly challenging to stay competitive, considering the bigger retailers that have moved into the space. How do you manage to stay afloat when you have, and I don't want to name and shame, but you do have those bigger chains that are around? How do you stay fresh and how do you stay competitive?
Well, you know what it is, Shanteh, which I think we kind of just run our own race, to be honest. Don't really, like, sometimes we might check to see what some of the bigger guys are doing with pricing. But for most of it, I think 90, well, maybe not 90, but at least 80% of the store, of the products that we sell, people don't price match for. It's about range. It's about range, pretty much. There's certain products that you just get flatlined on and you can't do anything about it. But I also think because, as you know, Bulleye Pass seems to be like a line where people don't cross unless they really have to go somewhere. So most people shop local, and that's what it is. And I think local people, they like to shop local. I think they understand, most of them do anyway, I think they understand what having local means for your town and your community. So I think that's really in our favor too. People they want to shop for convenience as well. We're lucky where we are. We've got a front entrance and a back entrance to the car park. They've got the IGA supermarket, so people can really get everything they need in one little space. So I think that convenience factor is definitely in our favor.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that people can, not have to get on a bike or in a car, wander down the shop. You have such a nice range of other gourmet products as well, so that if you are heading over, as we all know, to someone's house and we've got a BYO something, we're like, oh, I can't go empty-handed. I'll grab a bottle of wine. Maybe I'll get some nuts. Maybe I'll get a cheese. But I want to know, you've had a great lot of different people that have worked for you and worked in your store.
Yourself included?
Myself included, yes, my very early days. And in fact, the first role I ever had in wine was at Thirroul Cellars, and I learnt a heck of a lot. And I still to this day feel very emotional about the place because I was such a rookie and didn't know a thing, and loved my time stacking shelves. I even liked doing the cold beer fridge.
And chin-wagging with the locals.
Yeah, getting to know people, being able to select a bottle for someone and then them come in the next day and tell me it was great. I just got so much out of it. That's
such a good, rewarding thing when people come back and give you the feedback that, yeah, they really enjoyed it. It makes it worth it, right?
It does. But if someone was to walk in, what do you think great customer service looks like to you, and what do they get that they don't get in other places in Thirroul Cellars?
Well, acknowledgement, first of all. And, acknowledging a customer as they walk in, seeing if they need a hand, Like, what are you looking for? Let me help you find something. Especially some people just don't want to be bothered, but for the people who do, and then it's just about a conversation like what we're having now, and you can just have a conversation. You can tell them a story about a wine. You can tell them, and before you know it, you're having conversation, and you're becoming friends almost, and that's what important customer service is acknowledging and treating someone like with respect, and like you would an old friend, pretty much. I think that's what people enjoy, and that's what they don't want. A cold-faced, just aisles where they could just select themselves and people stacking shelves. They want to be engaged with, I think, and now even these days, all the staff, they've all got their customers, their favorite customers. They all come in, and that's what it's about. It's about creating a space where people, sometimes even customers, come in for a chat and don't buy anything. So that's what it is. It's a place for people to go to have a chat.
Yeah. And it isn't a place where there's ever been, I think, a hard sell on, let me talk you into this wine. Like, I always find that the staff couldn't really give a toss whether you bought a $300 bottle of champagne or a $20, bottle of Shiraz. They really don't care. They're just kind of like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, and this is it, and and this is what I've always told the staff, and this is what our ethos, I suppose, is that we don't sell for margin. We don't sell because we want to get rid of stuff. If we want to get rid of something, you put it on special, and that's what it is. But we really sell with integrity. We wouldn't make something up about a wine just because we want to sell it out the door. I don't think that's. You really have to sell with integrity. You have to sell with things that you like, and having the conversation as well. Going back to the earlier point, having the conversation with someone is also a way of you being able to figure out what they like. So you can actually pick something for them that you know that they're going to enjoy. So yeah, you have to sell with integrity. I think that's our motto anyway.
I love that. Today's staff talk about, does training play a part? Is there a development of their kind of knowledge as you go along? Do you have like serious training days, or is it a bit more casual? How does that look for you?
It's more casual. It's more like, fortunately, most of the people that come in, and this is the important thing about work, as you know, about working in the industry. And we kind of really do try to select staff that, select is probably a bad word, but try and find staff that really want to work, that they really want to get in the wine industry, or they really enjoy wine. We don't want someone who's just going to be sitting on the cash register and not really into wine. So most of them come with that already, which makes training very easy, because and the first thing we do with people is if they don't know a lot about wine, we'll get them a wine to drink, and then just that's the wine that you can choose for people because you enjoy it. And then we get them to talk about that wine, and then before they know it, they're in the lingo with us. And the other casual thing we do as well is we try wine a lot. So there's a lot of always sample bottles around. There's anytime there's a sales rep coming in to show off their wines, all the staff that are there all get in, and they might not know anything. They might not have tried a Soave before in their life, and so then the conversation starts. And once you start the conversation, it just ignites in the brain, and they start learning. Before you know it, within a few months, they've got a lot of knowledge they didn't know they had.
Yeah, and I like that approach because, like I said, I think it opens up the range of who you have working for you really, really diverse. I can't imagine you ever having a full-on wine wanker working in your store, though, Rory. I think anybody that was too nerdy might get the boot. That's
right. You can't bore people to death with wine. And wine's about fun, right? And that's what it is. It's about, we might talk with wine amongst ourselves, but we don't go to the next level. We just keep it on a good level where we're not waffling on about the wine and the hue and the blah, blah, blah. So it's just more about, and this is the thing, because most people who drink wine are just drinking to enjoy it. They're not drinking to dissect it. They're not drinking for any other reason but enjoyment. And we have to take that fun back into wine and take the seriousness out. and not just wine, for all drinks really. I mean, we do try everything that comes in the store, so we know we're stocking stuff that's good quality. And there is that as well. We have a kind of a rule, like for most things, that we don't really stock unless we've tried it. I don't buy wine off a sheet of paper. It has to be tried. We have to be able to talk about it. So I think that's an important thing as well.
These days, with a big, large staffing team that you have, what keeps you engrossed? What's the best part about the role that you have now?
Well, because I've kind of, I've kind of positioned myself that I don't have to be there all the time. And that's the kind of aim, is to have a bit more me time as well. But what I still really enjoy is I just enjoy the day-to-day stuff, the banter, the customers. But every now and again, you just sometimes will try a wine that will just blow your socks off. And those kind of things, as we also say, another thing that we things have to be compelling. Sometimes wine has to be compelling before we'll buy it. And sometimes you can get a bit bored with some things. But I had a really good wine last week, and that was kind of, it just stirs you up again. That you because quite often, as you'd be the same, when you drink a lot of wine, there's a little bit of a meh every now and again. But sometimes this one will come along and slap you around the face and go, wow, that's what it's about.
In terms of the other retailers around you, what kind of relationship do you have with other independent retailers? And is there much of a community spirit amongst the other shops around?
Yes, huge, which has been great. And what's really cemented that was when the plaza was there was a big plaza. I don't know if you remember that, but the plaza across the road had big developers in there, and they were going to pretty much turn Thirroul into a building site and knock down the coals there, build an underground car park. And there was going to be 87 units, and it was going to be a nightmare. So we fought against it as a community and as a business community as well. So that really cemented that whole, all the businesses in the area. Everybody, it's a small town. Everybody knows each other. All the business owners know each other. And I think there's a very good, when we want to get stuff done for our business, we can come together. If you want to put solar on your roof, you come together and everybody talks about who's the best solar people around or whatever. So there's definitely a good community, business community. And again, we all, during COVID, everyone was helping each other out. People were shopping local, businesses were shopping at other businesses. Everything was kind of kept together to keep everyone afloat. I think that's really important in a small community, that you treat people like it's like the old days. It's not like corporations or big businesses that it doesn't matter if one of them goes under. But if a business goes under in a small community, it's devastating, right? It's you got families who are losing an income. You've got staff losing a job. So it's important to have a good business community. Yeah, I think.
I totally agree. Now, Thirroul Cellars is located across the street from Anita's Theatre, which is an amazing theatre that has had some wonderful stars in it along the way. Do you have any stories about anybody that's popped in that's perhaps performed at Anita's?
No.
No.
I'm trying to think if there was because a few of them, I was like, I wonder if they'll walk in the store. But no, you never see them because they'll send someone across to get whatever they need. So we really haven't had the famous people walking into the shop, really.
Rory, that means I'm going to have to tell my story then.
Well, there's you had one. There's lots of famous people who live in the town, put it that way, but who do come and shop with us. But no one, I don't think any of the performers at Anita's have. But you tell me your story.
I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when John Butler Trio came and were performing and sent over a request for 12 bottles of wine, predominantly red, and you gave that to me as a job, and I was like frothing because I just love John Butler Trio. Oh, heaven. And so I was going to see them that night. And so I was just, they had a certain budget, but I wanted to make sure they had all these interesting wines. So I was getting like some Italians.
You were really going through the store.
Yeah, I really did go and got the best of the best. And I was just so thrilled that I could say that I picked out John Butler's wines for tonight. Anyway, I went and had Thai at Old Siam before the concert. And of course, I walk in there and who's sitting down next to my table but the entire band. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're sitting next to me. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go buy them a beer. They probably don't want to drink before the show, but I'm just going to go and I'm going to buy them a beer. And I bought them the El Bulli. I can't even remember the name anymore. But
the one that won the best beer in the world, that one.
Yes, that one. I can't, it's gone from me. And I thought, it's just a long neck and they can kind of share it. And I popped it on their table and I had a good old 10-minute conversation with them, told them I'd selected their wines. They were so kind to me. They were like, are you coming to the show? We'll get you tickets if not. And I had this great conversation. And then when they were playing, the bass player saw me in the crowd and pointed to me. And I was like, that's it. That's it. That's all over for me.
Your starstruck moment. That's excellent. I love it.
I will be forever grateful for that moment. And I just thought it was just the bee's knees.
That's so good. That's awesome.
I think that Thirroul Cellars means so much to the area. It is such a beautiful store where you can just get everything. But in the day and age of big chains and people taking over, it is so important that we look after our independent retailers. And I think you guys do an amazing job for all of the South Coast. If you haven't visited, you need to jump in there, grab some drinks, ask the advice from the people working in the store because they certainly know their store better than you do, and keep on keeping on because I just love what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it is good because it's another point on that as well is like with independent stores, if someone comes in and says, oh, I really like this wine or I really like this beer, we can actually go, you know what, we can investigate and we'll get that for you. Whereas some of the other big stores, you don't have that option. So it's like an old school bookshop, that's the way we kind of look at it. Like you can get rare and unique stuff that you can't always get at the bigger retailers because they've got their range and that's it, that gets sent down from head office and that's what they range. So we've got a little bit unique kind of platform, I suppose, that we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, you definitely do. And like I said, it's a beacon of hope. Thirroul is as trendy as it gets these days, but you guys certainly led that way. So well done. Rory, I want to know a bit about your palate. If you only had 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
Okay, I've been thinking about this. Well, I know it's going to be, the first one's going to be Pinot Noir. It'd have to be one of them. And then I've been tossing up between Chardonnay and Riesling. So I don't know where I'll go with that. I can't really make up my mind. And then depends on the day. And the third thing definitely is whiskey. I love my whiskey.
I thought you might say whiskey. Now, all right, I won't pinpoint you down to one brand whiskey, but where are we going in the world if we're going whiskey? Are we Japan, Tassie? Are we Ireland, Middletons? Where are we at?
Yes, so there's a very much a time and a place for a peaty Scotch, and I'm tending to move away from heavily peated stuff. So, look, there's a bit of a whiskey revolution going on in Australia at the moment anyway, and I've tried some amazing Australian whiskies. So I'm going to not name a country, but I'm just going to probably go with the style more than anything else. And that is probably that less peaty and more aromatic style of whiskey. Yeah, that's probably, so from there you can go anywhere. You can still go to Scotland, you can go to Ireland, you can go to Tasmania, you can go to New Zealand, you can go anywhere. And And that's probably what I'll stick with, the style.
I love that. It is fence sitting, but I have to say, when it comes down to whiskey, you're right. It depends on the mood, and there's so many good ones at the moment. And the fact that you've lived in Australia for longer than you've been in Ireland makes me proud that you're still flying the flag for Tassie and for Australian whiskey. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, they've really, like, even there's even some coming out of Sydney that have been amazing, and they've won a lot of awards. The whiskey awards were last week, I think, and they picked up quite a few awards. So, yeah, there's so many places to go with good whiskey. So it's encouraging.
Well, 3 excellent drinks, and it makes sense why we get along so well, because Pinot Noir, Riesling, Chardonnay and whiskey are all things I can get on board with any day of the week.
For sure.
Rory, it's been such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for my first job in wine, but also for the amazing job that you do down at Thirroul Cellars. It's been such a pleasure, and I hope our paths cross soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great.
Cheers to you, Rory. This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.